Hello, I'm Keith Hilson with Schmitt Music, and today we're going to talk about how to take your tuba out of its case and about some of the different parts of the tuba. Now, when you get your tuba from your school or from the music retailer you're working with, it may or may not have a case. Hopefully it does. Even though tubas are made out of brass, made out of metal, they are still fragile. They can be damaged, dented, dinged, or have worse things happen to them. If there is a case available, we always recommend using it whenever possible. If it doesn't have a case, we just want to be as careful as we can with it, make sure that we're not banging it into things when we're transporting it, making sure that it's safe. We'll talk about how to set your tuba on the floor to make sure it's as safe as possible. But if it does have a case, we want to use that case whenever we are not playing it. When you're done practicing, when you are done in band for the day, putting it back in its case is going to be the way to keep it the safest that it can be to help to avoid damage. So, assuming your tuba does have a case, it could look a couple of different ways. It could be like this, where it's a hard case and it has a soft fabric exterior, or it may be made out of a hard plastic or wood or some other type of material. In either case, it's going to be fastened one of two ways. Either it's going to have zippers like this, or it may have latches here. If your case has latches or if it has zippers, either way, we want to make sure that the case is upright. Very often the top, the lid of the case is narrower than the bottom of the case. If you have latches, the bigger part of the latch is usually on the bottom, and very often there is an emblem, or a maker's name or emblem on the top of the case. These are all ways to tell that the case is sitting the proper direction. If we open up the case upside down, it's very possible that the instrument might fall out and become damaged. So in this case, we're going to take our case and unzip it here. And there we have our tuba. So we have our tuba and we have our mouthpiece here. When we take the tuba out of its case, we want to grab it by the bell up here, and we can grab it down here by the valve tubing as well. As much as possible, we want to hold on to the largest parts of the tuba. Those are going to be the strongest and the most secure. When we take the tuba out of its case, if we want to set it on the floor, we can do a couple different things. Very often with tuba, we can set it on the floor like this, with its bell on the floor. Now, we have to be careful with this. We don't want to step on the bell. We don't want to have anything run into it because that can damage the bell. The other way that we can set the tuba on the floor is by setting it flat on the floor like this. Now, this might be a little bit more of a tripping hazard. Somebody may be a little bit more likely to run into it, but it's not going to fall down. It's not going to get damaged by falling off of a chair or something else. And so whenever possible, when we're not using the instrument and we're not putting it back in this case, putting it somewhere on the floor where it's secure is going to be the best thing to do. So we have our tuba out and we have the mouthpiece out. Let's talk about some tuba parts. So what are the different parts of the tuba? First off, let's pick up our tuba off the floor and put it on our lap. When we're picking up our tuba, what I usually do is take it by two parts here, the bell here, and our first tubing section right here. And I go and carefully pick it up off the floor and set it in my lap like this, or like this here. So, we're going to start at the top. This is the bell. All brass instruments have bells. The bell is what amplifies the sound and puts it out into the space that we are playing in. The bell comes through the bottom bow, the top bow here, and then it eventually leads to the valves, which we'll talk about in a second. Here we have the mouthpiece. The mouthpiece is actually what we use to help create the vibration on our lips. Our lips don't vibrate on their own. We use a mouthpiece to help to create that vibration and to channel that vibration and that air into the instrument. The mouthpiece, in particular the shank, the smaller part of the mouthpiece, goes into the mouthpiece receiver here. The mouthpiece receiver is a part of the lead pipe or the mouth pipe, and this is what leads that vibration and that air into the valves. All tubas have at least 3 valves. There are tubas that have 4 valves, 5 valves, even 6 valves, but every tuba is going to have at least 3 valves on them. And on the valve, we have the top here. We have the button, or the finger button. This is where we set our fingers. We have the valve stem right here. This is what leads and pushes down the valve itself. And we have the valve cap. The valve cap is what we unscrew to take the valve out. So the valve itself moves up and down in the casing here and uses these different ports to reroute the air. Now, when we unscrew the valve cap, we can of course take the valve out, and there are certain times we have to do that, for example, to oil the valve so it moves properly. However, I highly recommend not unscrewing the valve cap, taking the valve out, until you have a teacher show you how to do it. Different tuba designs have different types of valves, and sometimes if you're not sure how to put the valve back in correctly, either the tuba won't play properly or you can actually damage the valve. So make sure you ask for a teacher's help with that. On the front of the valves, we have this tubing here, and we have tuning slides down here. These tuning slides move. They allow us to change the intonation, the tuning of every valve to make sure that we can play in as tune as possible here. The tuba also has a main tuning slide, and that allows us to change the intonation, the pitch of the entire tuba, so that everybody in an ensemble can play at the same intonation here. One other thing that we're going to have on tuba is the water key. So if you can see these little valves down here, when we play brass instruments, the warm air we put into the instrument condenses on the cool metal, and the moisture in it cools down and becomes water. That water very often collects in the low spots of the instrument. If we get enough water inside the tuba, it starts making noise. We start to hear pops or burbles, or if there's enough water, it actually makes it difficult to play. So we have these water keys here. When we open these up, they will let the water out of these low spots, so that way we can keep playing. Now that we've talked about the different parts of the tuba, it's time for us to start our first note. So in the next video, we're going to talk about how to create our first note on the tuba. I look forward to seeing you there, and please keep making music.